I'm Chris Newton, creator of Feed, the Vampire Mythos RPG. In 10-Minute Mythos, I prove the endless possibilities of vampire role-playing by taking one random inspiration and using it to sketch out an original vampire mythos, all in 10 minutes. No prep, no script, just one gamer who loves a good vampire story. Wish me luck. Welcome to 10-Minute Mythos. I love horse ebooks, and what I love I roleplay about. So I'm going to use my d20. I'm going to roll at random one of the last 20 horse ebooks tweets, and I'm going to turn it into a story seed for Feed, the Vampire Mythos role-playing game. We got a 6 there, which means that our prompt is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Isn't a pyramid plan and has nothing to do with. Okay, time to put on the surrealist hat here, because this is going to take some doing. So, isn't a pyramid plan, first of all, there's a Buffy episode, which is actually not a bad episode, where they've got, vampirism actually is like a pyramid scheme. We can't do that. That's, a little obvious, and also it's been done by Buffy. So we've got to think of something else to do with this. In what other way could it be like a Ponzi scheme? Because this is a denial, right? A very ostentatious denial, so clearly it is one. Like, vampirism somehow is one, in this story. Wait. So it's not. We're talking about literal pyramids, let's say. We got 10 minutes, so let's just run with this idea, and I can always chuck this video if it doesn't work. So it's real pyramids. It's pyramids in Egypt, somehow connected, because, vampirism, death, pyramids, marble vampires from Anne Rice, all that stuff. It all fits together. It's perfect. So it's some kind of scheme involving pyramids, but it's being denied. Someone's denying that it really is. And let's say archaeologists, because archaeologists go with pyramids. So by free association, we arrive at vampire archaeologists who are trying to get into a pyramid, but they're denying that that's what they're trying to do. And we just had one of these 10-Minute Mythos episodes in which we had a bunch of vampires who were the cast of a BBC TV show, which I rather like that episode. So let's not do something like that. Let's not have them all be like a friendly band of archaeologists. Instead, what we could do is say that, let's say that only one of them really is. So we've got a character emerging here who's going to be defined in the story profile for one person to play, who really is an actual archaeologist. This could be like, we don't want it to be like Indiana Jones, but I feel like this should be set sometime after there started to be some standards for archaeologists, but before, when it was still Wild West enough that someone could get away with a scam like this, maybe. With maybe the aid of like some vampiric abilities. So let's say that it's in like the 40s or so, and we've got a character who's a real archaeologist, but he's kind of like again, we don't want to do Indiana Jones, but let's say that he's sort of like a Teddy Roosevelt kind of, like a heavy set kind of, man's man kind of get out there and do that archaeology kind of guy. So what has happened to him is, what we can have in this story is maybe vampirism is something that's endemic to more distant parts of the world relative to like Western culture. So it tends to be like in the nooks and crannies. There aren't a whole lot of vampires, but he's a well-traveled guy. He's been doing a lot of research, and he's run across a vampire who then turned him. So he's like one of the few sort of Western vampires. He discovers, because we need to figure out, like, okay, why does he want to get into a pyramid other than just archaeology? Because other characters have to then follow him into this. So what we could say is there's like a prophecy, or like there's going to be this apocalypse that happens because of a vampire, like maybe the first vampire who is, or maybe just like a vampire, like an ancient, powerful, magical vampire from Egypt who's locked up in one of these pyramids, right? Who was some like noble in life and became a vampire, was buried alive, and is one day going to rise up, and there's going to be like an apocalypse. So anyway, this prophecy exists, and it is passed on to our archaeologist, who's defined in our story profile, remember, as like one of the players is going to play this guy. And so he wants to stop this. So he needs to get into it, and he's very game about this. Like, other vampires maybe are kind of scared, and like this prophecy's been known, but he's kind of new to it. He's like the Captain Kirk of the vampire world, and he's like, well, you know what? He's a vampire. I'm a vampire. He's just waking up. His eyes aren't going to be adjusted to the light, so I can take him. So I'll just team up with some other vampires, and we'll go kick this guy's ass. But to do this, he needs to get into a hidden and probably trapped and warded pyramid, which is going to require all the usual kind of archaeological stuff. They need to be able to go out there and find it, and you need permits for that sort of thing. So he is an archaeologist. He has, his own special vampiric abilities, but he also has the credentials to organize this as a party. So what I like is the idea that the other player characters actually aren't archaeologists, but they're kind of playing along. They're all pretending to be part of this weird team that is going to go and do kind of adventurous archaeology. And actually, it would be cool if adventurous archaeology is kind of like, I want this to be sort of a pulp feel a little bit. So I sort of feel like there should be like archaeology is dangerous in the context of like this game world. Like attacks by the natives or whatever are fairly common. Weird like traps and strange diseases and having to fight off animals, all that kind of pulp magazine stuff is like fairly common for archaeologists to have to deal with. So he's dealing with his department, and their bureaucracy kind of accounts for all this stuff. So yeah, it's like it's fairly well controlled. The other vampires need him, and the other vampires though are very different. Like they're not Western. It would actually be cool. Like, what Vampire the Masquerade can sometimes degenerate into is like every person playing basically a different vampire genre. With like the Brujar, like the Lost Boy vampires, and the Toreador, like the Anne Rice vampires. Basically do that on purpose here and make it work in the story profile. And in fact, you could reinforce it with the strain template by saying, because normally, there's a unifying thing about like within this strain, within this game and this concept, vampires are going to have this kind of powers. Instead, have basically an anti-template where you say everybody can choose, but no two vampires who aren't from the same place in the world, in the same culture, can have similar abilities. They can't overlap traits. So you'd have a game world within which it's all one vampirism, but there are different adaptations to it in different parts of the world, and they're all different. So if you come from a different culture, you're going to have a different form of vampirism with totally different abilities. So it's sort of like mechanically reinforced niche protection. And every person is definitely from a different culture. It has their own kind of like, basically you're deliberately creating an odd couple situation, but they're all unified because they have all heard this prophecy and they all want to take out the vampire who's in this pyramid. And they all kind of grudgingly agree to work with this very brash American vampire who has the credentials to like get permission to go out into the sands of Egypt and do all this work. And they're fairly distant, so we can have these be vampires who are, I would say, at least fairly prone to being damaged by sunlight. I like the idea that like basically reversing the traditional archaeologist kind of problem where you're like harshing it out in the elements and everything's really tough and you have to kind of like make your way. But for them, it's not the for them it's the sun. Like even nice weather is a threat because sunlight is a threat to them. And not only are they hiding from wild animals, but they're also hiding from any other humans because they have to like avoid the sun and pretend that they're not what they are. And they also have to hunt, of course, so they're going to be on the prowl for various animals out in the wild. So basically turn the normal like archaeologist survival, like living out in the bush or out in the desert thing on its head by having them be vampires and have a very different style of life that they have to maintain. So that would be one part of it. It'd be the survival aspect. Also, there's going to be a pulp aspect. We've got, let's say, some ancient magical vampires, the descendants of the guy locked in the tomb, who are like maybe like two sisters, and they're like very kind of like they have vampire magic. They've got this cult that they've built up, this mortal cult, who've maybe like infiltrated government, and they're out there like trying to prevent these tombs from ever being messed with because they also have the prophecy and they want the apocalypse to happen. I was about to say vampire apocalypse, but that was last week. Just a regular apocalypse, locusts, all that stuff. So that's one enemy, right? So you've got the desert, survival, hiding from humans, all that stuff. Sort of like nature documentary kind of, naked and afraid sort of stuff. And then you've got, being attacked by cultists. They've got some death traps. There's like evil curses being used on you, and a mix of it too. So you've got magic, like magical snakes being sent and all that stuff. But you've also got, like they're dive bombing us in planes or whatever. And then you've got this whole bureaucratic side where you've got like the university back home who needs explanations of what you've been up to, why your archaeological practices involve all this outlandish stuff happening to you. And so you've got some sense that you have to reconcile the pulp stuff with like the real life stuff. I kind of feel like that could be funny. You know what the key to this is? Another archaeological team who are like serious, good people, good scientists, very methodical, very unglamorous, common sense approach to like keeping, all these people off of them, evil natives or whatever. And I apologize if this seems like a little racist. You would not play it racist at the table, but at the same time, I think you need the pulp tropes. So you certainly would not portray all Egyptians in this way or have like savages or anything like that. But I think you definitely would want an Egyptian-based sort of traditional ways, sort of brainwashed cult, because it's a pulp story. Anyway, this rival team of archaeologists are like perpetually outraged at what this other team is getting away with and what slapdash science they're producing, which actually works really well because they're mostly not scientists. They're like vampires from different parts of the world who are all kind of crammed together and have to pretend they're archaeologists, but they're really not. They're on like a much more mystical mission, and they're like action heroes pretending to be archaeologists. Speaking of these other vampires, and I think as a GM it would be really fun to play the rival group, the rival archaeologists, and it's always great to be able to bemoan player character action in character, like these violent lunatics with no connections just running around doing what they want. So my time is up, but real quick, I had an idea. I know I'm cheating, but basically each character has a different anchor trait about like culturally what links them to humanity, what is their cover that keeps them from just being a monster. And that way it would play up the strength of feed, where instead of having one static, like this is my humanity trait, instead it's about what traits do you have in value and then have the potential to lose, because it's, a 1-for-1 trait of a human trait for a vampiric trait. So that way you'd have all these strong personalities, each of which cares about something different. Like one of them clings to pride, one of them clings to, charity or chivalry, or, in the case of our American vampire, it might be like, just manliness. So each of them is kind of like losing something different in favor of vampirism. So you have a very tense relationship among them all, but they're unified by having to stop this prophecy. So anyway, that's it. I'm past my 10 minutes. The moral of the story is I love horse ebooks, and so should you.